Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm super excited today because I'm going to be making a sausage and cheese stuffed bread for y'all. Who doesn't like that? Carbs, sausage, cheese, one of my favorite things. So to get started, I have a pound or so. It's about a pound and a quarter. I'm going to add all of it, even though my recipe calls for a pound of some sausage. I have bratwurst, but you can use whatever kind of sausage that you want. A spicy Italian would be good too if you like a little kick. Chorizo would also be great, and it would give a beautiful color to the bread. But I had this bratwurst in the freezer, so I decided to use it. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to get this decased. So sausage is always got to have a casing around it if it's in link style. Sometimes they're natural casings and sometimes they're not. But for our purposes, we aren't going to need that. So I'm going to take it off. There's two ways you can do this. You can either use a sharp knife and cut that casing off and then kind of just unwrap it like this. Have a little bowl to put them in. Or you can do a little bit of a funner method, the squishy method, where you can just squeeze. Sometimes it'll either pop out the ends or it'll burst like mine did. You can squeeze it out the bottoms. A little bit of a cleaner way is the cut method, but squishy method is really fun. Either way, you just want to make sure that you get these casings off, and then we're going to sear it up and cool it down before we fill our lovely bread. So I'm going to keep on doing this, and I'll see you when I'm done back at the stove. All right, so you want a really nice hot pan when you're going to be searing this up. That's going to make sure that your sausage is going to brown, and it's going to make it much more flavorful. If you start out in a cold pan, it's not going to end well. You'll end up boiling your sausage. So sausage is kind of hard to break up. So you're going to have to really pay attention to it and just stay with it. As it gets to cooking, it'll be a little easier. But when it first starts, it's kind of rough.
If you guys were making this recipe, let me know in the comments below which sausage you would use. If I had to make it again, I think I would use chorizo.
All right, this is starting to look really good. And because this is just bratwurst, it's not got a really punchy flavor like a chorizo or an andouille. So I'm going to add a little bit more seasonings to this. I've got some garlic powder, some cayenne, a little heat, and black pepper. I'm from the South, so I kind of think that every single dish should have an abundance of black pepper in it. And lastly, I've got a bottle of red wine that I've been sipping on for the past couple of days. I am going to add a little bit of this in there as well. And that should add a nice little depth of flavor to it that I think you'll really enjoy. It'll come through in that bread. Starting to get these big chunks broken up. It smells delicious. Oh my gosh. All right. So this is looking done. And now I'm going to put it in a little strainer and give it a drain. Great. Perfect. So I'm going to let this drain and cool down while I make my bread dough. And then we'll get to filling. See you soon. Time to make the dough. All right, to start off, you're going to need 1 1/4 cups of warm water. A little over 100 degrees is best. That's going to make the yeast super happy. I'm going to add that into my stand-up mixer. I'm gonna put a little bit of sugar in that too, not too much because you don't want this to be a sweet dough, but you do want to give your yeast something to eat. I like to use dry active yeast for this and bloom it in that warm water. You can use instant yeast and skip this part of the recipe, but I don't like to because I really enjoy this next part. Add that in. Give it another little good stir. And so putting this yeast into this warm water with sugar is going to do what's called blooming. And that is going to hydrate the yeast, bring it back out of that dormant state that it's currently in, and make it start producing the gas that ultimately is going to leaven your bread dough.
Okay, I know one day I'll probably have to take these out of these videos. It's a little redundant, but I just love this. It's like fireworks. Woo!
After that yeast is bloomed, I'm now going to add about a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. I like to add the good stuff to this because this is, in a way, flavor, not just an oil. And next, I'm going to add 4 cups of all-purpose flour and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. I put the salt on top of this flour and I'm mixing it in a little bit because you don't want that salt to hit that yeast directly because it can kill it. It's a little bit toxic to that yeast. I also measured this flour by weight. It's about 120 grams per cup of flour. And I did that to ensure that my dough is going to have the right dry to wet ratios and ultimately give it the best textures. You don't want this dough to be too dry or too wet. Just have the right texture in your mouth. So now we're going to give this a good mix. Always watch the machine. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten to do that.
So here you can see the dough as it just starts to mix. It still looks a little bit dry. I did actually add another 2 tablespoons of water to this because it looked too dry to start. As it continues to mix and that dough hydrates, you will start to see that it does start sticking to the sides of the bowl. This is good, but you need to keep mixing. You want this to start pulling away from the bowl. And here, this is probably after about 7 or 8 minutes, and you can see that the dough is pulling away from the bowl. I don't have audio on this, unfortunately, but you can hear the dough slapping on the sides of the bowl. Here you've got the finished product, and it looks great.
So next up, just give it a nice cover with a clean tea towel and let it proof for 1.5 hours. All right, so our beautiful pizza dough has proofed for about 1.5 hours. It's a little bit more than double in size. It smells like yeast and olive oil. So good. I can't wait for this. So go ahead and give a nice little punch on your dough. You can pull it down from the sides. Still a little bit sticky, but that's okay. We're going to put flour on our bench. I like to use a decent amount, but not too much because you don't want to dry out your dough. That's one of the biggest issues that people have when they make doughs or cookies that they have to roll out is they add too much flour to the bench, and that ultimately adds flour to your dough. You don't really want to do that. You want to use as little as possible. get this guy scraped out. All right. A little bit more flour for my hands. Top. It's amazing that this dough, just because we used a stronger extra virgin olive oil, you can smell the olive oil in the air. It's really going to be good. I'm so excited for this. All right, so I'm going to try to form him in a somewhat even shape to start, because I ultimately want him to end up even all the way across as a rectangle. I'm going to give him a nice roll. Let's see how I do with this shape. Hopefully not too bad. I guess if it is bad, it'll taste the same, right? Okay. So, not too shabby. You can do a little pull on him. That'll help you. So he's a little sticky to the bench, and that's okay. It's going to help him maintain his shape as I'm putting fillings in him. But just be delicate with him. All right. So that looks like a good shape to me. We're going to start with about a pound of mozzarella. We're going to sprinkle that down pretty evenly. You want to leave a little bit of space around the edges. And then on top of that, our delicious sausage mixture. When we started, we did have about 1.25 pounds. To be honest with you, I've been munching on it. So it is probably about 1 pound now. No judgment. You just want to make sure that it's even to ensure that when you're slicing this later, every slice is going to have a good amount of cheese and sausage in it. You don't want to have big spots in it with no sausage or cheese, because then you'll be cheating yourself or cheating whoever you're feeding it to. Nobody likes that. Right. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of egg wash. I'm going to go around the outsides of it because we are going to ultimately smush these edges together to seal it. You don't need to be real pretty with it. Just get a good amount on it. Perfect. All right, so just like this is a savory cinnamon roll dough, you're going to take your ends and you're going to start turning them in up on themselves. And you want it to be pretty tight. You don't want to leave it too loose, or when you cut it, you're going to have pockets, and you don't want that. You want it to be a nice tight swirl. Guys, I am so excited for this. Oh my gosh. All right, so I'm going to pick this up on top for now, pinch that over, and now I'm going to pinch these edges because I really don't want to have any of this filling leak out. And this is the best way to ensure that does not happen. No promises that it won't, but this will help. Okay, so now we have this beautiful dough all formed, and I am going to try to transfer this as delicately as possible onto my sheet. And I'm going to also flip him over so that seam will be on the bottom. And he's a little bit curved, which is fine. When you slice him up, you won't know the difference. Now, just a little more egg wash on the top. This is going to help ensure that he's going to have a nice glossy golden finish. Because he is a lean dough and he's also not a sweet dough, he doesn't have the dairy or the sugar in him to help him brown. So this egg wash is kind of going to help him get there without those added bits. Okay. Now, he's a little bit big for my sheet tray that I have here. So I am actually going to transfer him onto a larger tray just to ensure that as he's baking, he's got more room to grow. So I'm going to do that right now, and then I'll meet you back here to put him in the oven.
All right, our bread is going into a 375-degree oven for 30 to 35 minutes, and I'll be back after that to show you what it looks like.
All right, so it's been about 30 to 35 minutes plus a 10-minute rest. Our bread is all done, and my gosh, does it smell amazing in here. I am so looking forward to this. So without further ado, let's cut this bad boy open and taste it. Okay, let's see. Ooh, steamy, cheesy, sausagey. It's extremely hot, but I want you to see the center. Oh my gosh, look at this. Cheesy, sausagey, deliciousy. I'm taking a bite. Oh my gosh. It's so squishy. It smells so much like sausage and cheese and just all the good things in the world. Mm. Wow. There's a little bit of a pop from the cheese. And then on the very end of it, some spice from the cayenne that I added into it. If you don't like that spice, cut that out. You won't get any of that. But the dough is so moist. Mm. Mm. Dip this in some marinara. Perfect little meal. With or without it, delicious.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.